We are now with the current and still and remaining and always the Cage Warriors World Lightweight Champion of the World, Mason the Dragon Jones. I almost sounded professional then, look at that. How
Oh,
we
man,
doing?
it sounds so good. Every time I hear that, it sounds so good.
So, talk us through that fight week, because most fight weeks don't start and, end the way they did with the venue change and empty arena.
So my opponent, the Italian I was meant to be fighting, Danilo, pulled 2 weeks out. He had medical problems that I wasn't I wasn't informed of. We weren't really interested in knowing the reasons. It was private for him, so we sort of left them to it and we're like, just find a new opponent. They found a new opponent then in Crazy Legs. I don't know his name. He was meant to fight someone, Martin Stapleton, I think it was, and he had a eye infection, so it was quite basic, and they said he should clear up in time. And then a week out, I had a call to inform me that his eye infection hadn't cleared up at all. It got worse, so he was out, and the only opponent they could sort of find me, due to all borders being closed, was Joe McGolgan, whose opponent had also pulled out. So were we interested in making that matchup? My team were. And then they said, because the two of you were sort of quite high up anyway, I was obviously favourite to fight for the belt next. They'd informed me that before. They said, obviously, a win year, and then we're more than happy to put you on for the title. Because the two of you were, Joe's a contender, and obviously you're next in line, we'll put the belt on the line. So it ended up working out in my favour. And then that was also obviously that I knew about a week before. And then I think it was a bit less than a week before, but it was no problem. And then obviously there was the questions about would the show be going ahead? Like, had we heard anything? There was messages non-stop. What's happening? We're hearing this closed doors. And I just sort of cracked on. My coaches were the same as me. Just said, keep your head down, do what you got to do, get everything finished. Get your weights done, you run, get your weights done, get your weight done, get your runs in, make sure you're eating the right things, just finish everything perfect. And to be fair, my camp did go perfect. And then obviously we found out a few days before that it was closed doors. And then before that, a couple of days after that, then we found that they'd moved it to Manchester, which was a little bit annoying, because obviously I paid for accommodation for my coaches. So Cage Warriors, as good as they are, they're only financially able to support funding for you for hotels away, and one of your coaches. Obviously, I've got a full coaching team, so there was 3 of my coaches, and I also have a nutritionist who travels to help me with my weight cut. So I paid for all their rooms for, obviously, my nutritionist who's at my weight cuts. We got there on the Wednesday, ready for weigh-in Thursday. So I paid for his accommodation Wednesday and Thursday. Cage Warriors ended up paying for that themselves. Because I booked it for London. When we moved, they just got us a 3-person room and upgraded, fair play to them. And then in my other coaches, we sort of managed to get them accommodation sorted. So it was no problem. And then obviously the fight went ahead. We got moved down, and it was literally, I've used this word before in previous interviews, it was military the way they did everything. Military precision. We had times that you had to be on time for, and it was literally, get you at this time, you'll be done by this time, and then you're gone, and you have this long to clear out. And it was like that all the way through. So weigh-ins, they turned up, they tested our temperatures, we weighed us in as quick as possible, and then they kicked us out. And it was I liked it because it was military. We weren't hanging around. Like, weigh-ins was quicker. We had the earlier weigh-ins and normal as well. We were sent straight from there. Then we was told, look, the bus will be to pick you up if you need transport. You have to be here by this time to do the pre-fight meeting, your medicals, and to get temperature checked again. And then you can leave, but we don't really want you going far, and you have to be back at this time. And it was done well. And then obviously when we got there for the fight and stuff, and everything went down, we was ID'd on the gate, and we had to show proof of who we were, sort of thing, to get in. And then when we got in again, there was someone on the door then who was checking us to make sure no unauthorized personnel got in. And as soon as we was in there, we was escorted to the change rooms and told we weren't allowed to leave. And that was that. So it was, like I said, it was done as safe as possible. And I was more than happy the way everything went. Obviously, it was a good night for me. And you really couldn't argue that Cage Warriors could do anything else. None of us were sick. None of us on the card got sick. We were all kept and advised to do as minimum as possible. So during weight cut week when we were in the hotel, they told us not weight cut week, the last few days. So I was there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They said, look, don't leave the hotel. Just stay in the hotel. Everything's sort of provided for you. Food's there for people who can eat, and just don't really leave. So we didn't really go far. So it was ideal.
So, regards of the weight cut itself, how was your weight cut with everything going on, regards of the stress and everything else of the uncertainty? How smooth was that cut for you initially?
Well, it's the biggest cut I've ever done. I was the biggest I've ever been, and the cut went perfect. It went perfect. So when I test weighed before I went down to official weigh-ins, I was 0.1 under. So I have two scales. I have scales here that in the house, which is set in the corner of the gym, and that's never moved. They're really, really expensive scales. Like I think when I had them when it was the judo, I had funding, and I think they're like £500 scales. So they're top notch. And we've got a board that goes down, and like they're scales that cannot be moved. And then we've got another scales that can be moved, and they're also recalibrated every year, and they were the scales I took up with me with the board. So we knew I was smack on. There's never a problem with those scales, and I was 0.1 under by the time we went out of weigh-in. So it was perfect weight cut. As to the stress side of things, I don't think it was more stressful. I've got family, I've got managers and coaches who sort all the stressful stuff. So I think the most stressful thing that happened really is my fight shorts didn't show up. So I have sponsors who pay to be on my fight shorts as well as my t-shirt and my banner. So we informed them, and they didn't really care. They knew the problems that was going on, and they were happy to continue as normal.
Oh, that's good of them to sort of be so reasonable, because as much as everything is going on, it's still, a big opportunity for them to get their brand out and their awareness out.
And they pay, so my top-notch sponsors pay $5-something grand a year. So they support year-round, which obviously if they didn't, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. So they cover all my expenses and stuff. So for them to be so understanding of everything, that was perfect for me.
So when you were saying about the opponent changes, how specific is your fight camp and your fight prep per opponent?
We're really professional the way we do things. So as soon as we have an opponent, before we accept, we do breakdowns of the opponents. And more so, it's never what they do, it's what do I do, what can I do to sort of dismantle them in the most efficient way possible. So let me give you an example. For Joe, Joe's got good tie kicking. He's good if he builds momentum, and he's dangerous on the front foot. He's a dangerous striker, and he's got good takedown defense. But if you put him on the back foot and you start hurting him, he shells up, and then he's hoping to get him finished after he shells up. So I also knew he didn't really check kicks too much, even though he got dangerous kicks himself, he doesn't check. So these were all things that we knew from prior sort of breakdowns. Like sometimes when I have free time myself, I break down fighters that are in my division or UFC fighters. So we break down how we would be game plans to use against them. So we already had a game plan for Joe in place from when I first debuted, and that was a game plan we used, and it worked spectacularly.
Yeah, because watching some of Joe's fights, he's had a lot of like wars and stuff. To see you finish him the way you did, that was remarkable. That knee was horrible. I remember watching it live, that was grim.
It was more so. So the way I finished Joe was, if you noticed, as soon as I started putting pressure on his front leg, I traded a little bit too much, to be honest. I should have been a bit more in and out. He was a bit longer than I expected. And then when I closed range with him, I worked the top of the leg. So I was always kicking the bottom of the calf, and then I was kneeing the top of the quad. So I was making sure I was working the same leg constantly, trying to move him a little bit so he couldn't really settle his feet to throw shots too much and just keep driving those knees in until the point where I knew I started to hurt him. And then the last calf kick I threw hurt his leg, and that made him start planting his feet. As soon as he planted his feet, I caught him with a left hook on a right hand. And as soon as I catch him, you see him start shelling. So now he's got pain in his front leg. He can't really move. He's taking shots to the outside, which is making him sort of shell up. So with Joe, what he does is he pulls into a tighter shell and he turns his head down a little bit. And that, the fight against Ben Lacta, Ben threw some very good uppercuts because Joe had his chin down. So I knew if I can get the shell up and I get his head down, then I can finish him with something underneath. So it was either going to be an uppercut or a knee, but as soon as his head came down, I took the opportunity and threw the knee, and he'd hit flush, and that was him done. Like, they counted it as a TKO, but he was done. Like, I knocked him out with that knee. If I'd stepped straight down, he wasn't going to recover from it. But obviously, with title on the line, I want to make sure, and I'm always I wanted to make sure that the ref was stepping in to stop it rather than obviously me knowing he was done. So I put a couple in to make sure that it was done deal, and he wasn't going to recover because Joe is very tough.
Well, I say KO, TKO, call it what you want. I mean, you got the first round finish and you got that big shiny gold belt. You call it what you want. Now, on the topic of specific opponents and specific camps,
yeah.
Team Alpha Male, what was that camp like before? Was it Cardiff card?
I've been out a few times, so I've been out for the past 2 or 3 years. I've been out, I don't know how many times I've been now, but multiple times. So I've got a good relationship with the guys out there. Obviously, Touchy Feely, Uriah, Cody Garbrandt, Darren Hawkins. There's multiple ones. There's loads out there. Chris Gonzalez, who fights with Bellator. There's unbelievable guys there who I work with regularly. There's Tawfiq, I can't say his second name, but he's the Risen Lightweight Champion. I did work with him in the camp before this one. And then so leading into this camp, I did a lot of work with Chris Gonzalez on my wrestling. Chris is a good friend of mine, and when I go out there, we'd get a lot of good work in. And then there was a welterweight I did a lot of work with, and Max Griffin, who fought in UFC 2 weeks before my fight. He's a welterweight. Obviously, he had a tough fight against the Brazilian Cowboy. He lost on a decision, but it was very close. Me and Max got some really good rounds in. Being a weight above was perfect for me. So I'm showing that I'm really at that level. As well as boxing, sparring with Jamie Cox. I don't know if you know much about boxing, but Jamie Cox was 24-0 before he fought George Groves for the world title. He lost that fight, and then he lost again, and then won one. So he's 25-2. So he's an incredible guy. His boxing is phenomenal, and we got some really good work, and I'm really looking forward to doing some more work with him. But do you mean I've got perfect sparring partners? They're spectacular. Like, you're not going to see anyone in Cage Warriors level with striking like Jamie Cox. I've got kicking coaches who have kicked for different things. My girlfriend. I
was going to say, all the kicking coaches, make sure you mention her, otherwise she might have something to say.
A Commonwealth Games bronze medalist, as well as she medaled in Olympic qualifiers, and she's one of the top kickers in the country. And coming out of that fight, the main thing I was disappointed with out of everything was my kicking, mainly because I didn't really get into range. That was my excuse for it. But I remember when I come out of it afterwards, she didn't say anything when we come out afterwards, and the next day she turned around and was like, what the hell were you trying to do kicking wise? She was like, apart from your calf kick, because she leaves that up to my Thai coach, and she comes out more Thai style, but my sides, my spin, my reverse side kick, she was like, were abysmal. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. Thanks.
At least he's honest, nothing else.
Well,
so with training out over in Alpha Man and stuff, how do you build that relationship in the first place? Because I imagine with being professional MMA fighters, it must be a bit of a touchy subject almost to almost going to someone else's home when it comes to you being a future contender against them. Say you step to the UFC, then you're in the crosshairs almost. How did you get there in the first place to train out there?
So elite sport, obviously you never know who's a training partner, who's going to be a future adversary sort of thing. So you just take it as you leave it. But you got to remember these guys. So the guys who are based out in Team Alpha Male, they see people come in and back and forth 24 hours a day. So I was out there for my first time. I was out there for 4 weeks. I had it in off a friend of mine who's trying to get based out there, Nad Nadamani, who fights in UFC. So me and Nad, obviously from the same jiu-jitsu team. So I'd done some training with Nad previous, and he was on about going out there, and I said I'd love to. I've done training camps in multiple places anyway. I've trained in Boston, American Top Team when I was 17, Boston when I was 18, but I was with judo. Vegas, I've done boxing camps. I've done camps in Moldova with judo, with the Olympic team. So I've trained in different places with different people loads. But getting out there and seeing them was something different. The guys are very welcoming. All the UFC guys. I remember the day I got there, Uriah came up, shook my hand, and said, "Look, he'll show me around." Took me down, asked, we introduced ourselves, and then he introduced me to Cody, and Cody put his arm around me, took me onto the mats, and introduced me to everyone and made sure I fit in. Okay, I think I must look a little bit nervous, like I was only 21 at the time, so I was a young dog going in anyway, into a room of killers. Like there was 21 people on the mats who was in UFC at the time, so they introduced me, and at the time, no one wanted to train me. So anyone who's in UFC, you're polite, you ask to train with them. And if they don't want to, they say no, and that's it. You just back off, and then you do it. And the main reason is that they're there. That's their career. They're at the top of the tree. So they're living the dream. So they're not going to have hungry fighters come in, and they don't know who's going to sort of try and take them out. You get that in training camp. So the ones who are based there, they're friendly, but until you sort of earn and they can see that you're not a dickhead, and that they're just not gonna spend their time on you. So it wasn't long before the likes of Darren Elkins and Chris and all started doing some rounds with me, and we built up a solid relationship. So every time I go out there, they straight away they're like, "Oh, good, we can get rounds in this week," and they're always asking me to train, and they know like how that you're always there for every session, because the amount of people who go, they spend all this money to train with Team Alpha Male, and they train 3 times. So when I was out there last time, I was out there for a month, and there was a Japanese guy staying, I don't know his name, but he was staying with one of the coaches, Adam, he's based more on the gym side of things, but he's a previous British Taekwondo squad, so my girlfriend knew him, so knew of him, Adam Corrigan, so he helped me with some of my kicking sessions as extra sessions on the weekends. And he was staying with him because he gets along with the Japanese fighters more than all the rest. And the guy was there, and he trained once, and he was out there for 4 weeks. So they're paying all this money, and they don't train. And that's really common where people sort of, they get out there and they train a little bit, and they just sort of, they dip their feet in now and again, they do the sessions they want, rather than sort of the way I do it, whereas you're on every session every week. Like this time, because I was in fight camp, I was doing 2-3 sessions a day. Most of the times you're on the elite sessions twice a day, with certain ones where I was sort of doing once a week before sparring days the next day and stuff, and making sure I was fresh and keeping the injuries down. But you push hard, do you know what I mean?
So a few things to take from there. First of all, it's so refreshing hearing how welcoming they all were, because that kind of persona they try and give off and like the UFC footage and stuff, they're always meant to be like, intimidating, knockout artists, all this kind of stuff. But it's good hearing they're actually like, friendly and approachable and, nice people.
Oh, they're unbelievably friendly, and like they're martial artists, and they're really nice people. So like if you ever see them and they ever clip you too hard, or you clip one of them too hard, like everyone's apologetic, and you're like, "Look, I'm sorry," and they're like, if you clip them, they're like, "Oh no, it's fine. I should have been a bit tighter." Or if they catch you with something, they're like, "Shit, you okay?" And because
that's good. Yeah,
it's not about destroying each other. They see you as a teammate, but they want to help you be the best you can be. There's teams. I fear that ATT is quite like that, where they're quite sort of. They have one squad session for their team who's based there, and then they have another session for people who were there just to train out of there. So when people who fly in, or the internationals who come to sort of train, they keep another separate session. Team Alpha Male don't do that. They'll do it if it's really busy. They'll split the sparring sessions, but most of the sessions are all open plan. You can turn up and train, and as long as Uriah knows you're there, and they're more than happy to have you on the mats, and they're really welcoming, and they don't hide things. They show you as much as they can. They're there to make you improve.
That's good to hear. With the timetable and the amount of time training out there, the nature of people being there all the time, training like you said 2 or 3 times a day, how intense were all the sessions? Were they like scaled and themselves? Were they, each session was meant to be identified beforehand as like a technical session, or is it just every session's balls to the wall, kind of like burnout?
So the schedules are all listed, but the intensity of the sessions are all very intense. So they don't advise you to do every session. Like I said, so the sparring day is the Wednesday morning, and it's split between 2 sessions. So there's the morning session, which is lightweights, middleweights, and someone else. And the next session is supposed to be featherweight, band, and someone. I can't remember the split now, but they split into 2 weight groups. And some people do both sessions. So when I was out there, I do the both. You do 6 rounds in each one. Yeah, 3 with boxing gloves, 3 with MMA. So you're trying to do 12 rounds. In between now, when I was in fight camp, I do probably 8 rounds. So you do a couple, sit one out, do a couple, sit one out, make sure you're staying fit and staying healthy. And then after that, it's your own time. So I get my own sessions, and after that, my strength conditioning and stuff. But on the Tuesday, there's a full day of sessions. I would do the morning sessions because they're intense. And then they had another session in the evening. I missed that before sparring just because I want to make sure I'd recovered in time, because the sessions, they're ridiculous. And like the temperature of the gym, so the gym is kept temperature controlled and it's basically heated. So the gym is always boiling. So coming from Wales,
I was going to say it's a bit different, yeah.
It's hard. So you have to make sure you're fluids and you're keeping hydrated. And before I found a sort of hydration supplement that works for me, I really struggled. I use a company called Precision Hydration. They don't currently sponsor me, but I use their supplements in my training camps, in my weight recoveries and everything. And their supplements the best I ever had. So that's sort of taken my training again. And I spoke to the guys after it, and my S&C coach, my nutritionist, and they all both agreed that I think it just took my training to another level and really made a difference, because I've struggled in the past where I've done training camps and dehydrated and made myself quite sick. So obviously we have to take the day out then and try and recover and drinking coconut water and stuff. And the precision hydration stuff was unbelievable.
It must be quite a strange sort of change of climate and everything else. And with like your training as a whole, we've trained with different places all over the world. Is there certain things you think are being oversighted? So, for example, like you say, sparring with boxing gloves and sparring with MMA gloves, like that kind of strategy way of doing sessions.
To be honest, I don't really see much of a difference between. The only difference between my training here and my training there, and the gyms I trained at, and sort of like all the gyms I trained at in there, is just the level of sort of fighters. Like here, you get a lot of people who do it as a hobby. Out there, they're all professional fighters. Like I said, there's 20 odd of them in UFC or Bellator. So, like, their job is to compete. Whereas in the UK, my MMA team is, I train in different gyms. I train Jiu Jitsu in one place, my Thai in a different gym, my boxing in another place. I do it all through different gyms. It's all in one gym. It's all provided. Everything's in one place, so it's more relaxed. I like my setups in both. Like splitting my camp the way I do, I really enjoy it.
So you say you're splitting your camp then. So say you've got, this is fight booked 8 weeks out or however long you do your camps. How do you split your days out, like regards of S&C in a week or intensity of sessions, that kind of thing?
So my S&C sessions in themselves programs. So I do 12, 14 week camps, blocks, and he sorts all that out. So there's different phases in different camps, different parts of the camp leading up. So they sort of make sure that I peak at the right times. All that's included to make sure I'm strong at the right time, my weight's in the right place, all this. My run's the same. My running is all programmed, so I know exactly how much I have to run on what days, what intensity I'm doing, whether I'm doing sprint work or whether I'm doing recovery work. And I normally run recoveries at about 50-minute slots, slow, certain speed, and I do all my runs on treadmills as much as possible, just because it's obviously the stress on the body is much more relaxed, and you recover easier. My nutrition is all planned, so that's all phased again to make sure I'm at the right weights, and I'm eating good quality-based foods, and I'm sourcing my foods as healthy as possible, and that you're eating the right amount. So everything is literally, I'm told to eat this, and this, so it makes it all easier. And then my training schedules, we all sort of get them together and find out what works. So when I'm home, I lift 3 times a week, I run 3 times a week, and then I do 3 sessions a day. One intense, one recovery, and then one sort of medium session, Monday through to Friday, and then I'll either have the weekend off depending on how much sparring I've done, or I'll have a session on Saturday. So it varies. Whereas out there, I sort of follow their schedules a bit more, and then I add in my running and my S&C work. So they both got their sort of their benefits, and they both got their sort of drawbacks. Obviously, Team Alpha Male is a good wrestling-based camp. I have a good striking coach who helps out there, but he only does sessions with me because of the schedule, sort of once, twice a week. Whereas out here, I make sure I do my striking every morning. I have good base quality striking coaches that I have easy access to. So it's a bit easier for me at the moment. I think obviously the benefit that would be when I eventually, if I do end up living partly out in America, which I'd like to do, and doing my full camp out there, all I do is bring my striking coaches in and making sure that I've got access to striking coaches and just mixing it up like that. So America would be the dream place to do my fighting camps. It's just obviously sorting out the program and making sure the program's in place. But I'm already as professional as we can be with the way we do things. Like I said, everything's programmed. We try and make sure that if everything's as planned as can be and everything goes to plan, then there's minimal mistakes. Obviously, you can't really prevent injuries, but if you do in your recovery as much as possible, then you're as healthy as possible. Then you're limiting everything as much as possible.
Well, definitely. I mean, like you're saying with the UFC guys, that respect of who your training partners are, who's going to look out for you, who wants to take that belt from you, who wants to help you get another one, that kind of mindset. So with opponents, has anyone... So I've got a question on Instagram of who is your toughest opponent, but I want to expand that a bit. Is who's your toughest opponent, but also who's exceeded your expectation? Who was tougher than you thought would be, kind of thing?
Right, so Sean Luther, my debut, was tougher than I expected. Yes, he was tougher than I expected. When I seen Sean, I watched his previous fights. I thought I'd be able to finish him easier. I was just coming back into MMA. I'd been back into MMA for like 5 months or less than that. So my game was still a bit sort of split. So I was still boxing at one point, then I was kicking, then I was wrestling, then I was jiu-jitsu, rather than letting it all flow, mixing together. That took me about another year to get sort of back together, and then I've obviously improved since then. So Sean was probably someone who I thought was going to be easier than he was. I wanted to see if I could finish him striking for the first round, and then after that I decided to finish him in the second, and I struggled. He stepped out a couple of times. Again, the main thing, one of the reasons I struggled with was I didn't obviously realise the difference between training and competing in gyms with clothes on and training in tiny little shorts and everyone both sweating, that how much slippery it'd be. So he slipped out a few times, and then obviously I got the finish in the third. My toughest opponent to date, I think would be Desmay, mainly because he was probably the strongest opponent I've come up with, and he was dangerous all the way through. That's why I sort of played it the way I did. But yeah, each opponent's different, and obviously I'm a better fighter now than I was at the start. So if I had to fight the Desmay fight again, I'd probably do different. But yeah, I go with them too.
With each fight, because obviously being a professional is so much more weight than being an amateur, and then now climbing those ranks and now being a champion, how do you deal with the mental side of that? How are you like between fights and in fight camp? Are you quite good at dealing with that kind of pressure as such? How do you deal with it, kind of thing?
So I don't really struggle with pressure too much at all, really. Leading up the fights, I'm really good at my visualization and my mental exercises. I do, so I'm always ready to go. We always make jokes that I could go down the co-op, the local shop, and I'm always ready to fight then. So it's never really a worry about being prepared. I'm always prepared. I'm always ready to go. We never really stop training. So this is the biggest struggle I've had in a while, training-wise, because the gyms are closed. And I'm still training 2-3 times a day. So it's you literally make of it what you do. But yeah, I don't really struggle with pressure of things. I don't really worry about people. I do the best I can do, and I've been in this sport since I was 7 years of age. So I've been competing heavily since I was about 10. So I'm 25 today. So 15 years, maybe 14 years, of competing heavily, and years of those I spent in judo, which was competing against guys who were more experienced than me, who were stronger than me, who were bigger than me, who've been doing it for longer, who were better than me, and trying to beat them. And then you lose. And as soon as you can lose in anywhere between a second to 4 minutes, and then you lose, you go home. You win, you move on to the next round. And then if you lose, you either get eliminated, or you're most likely you're eliminated, or you may go into repechage. You get to do it all again. So it's a weird sort of. It was a weird system growing up in, but I never worry about losing in these fights. If someone to beat me, you're really gonna have to kill me. Like, you're gonna have to try and you're gonna have to break something, or you're gonna have to sleep me. And I'm not really. I'm as prepared as can be in these camps. So by the time fight day comes around, the hardest problem I have is staying calm. Like, I'm ready to decapitate people from the go. So it's always the hardest part is staying calm and trying to stop the adrenaline from setting in too early, because I get too excited and I end up dancing around, and you have to stay calm, try and save the adrenaline until the cage closes and they let me do what I'm bred to do.
So a few things there. One question before I forget to ask it. On fight day with all that energy, do you have like a routine you sort of follow, sort of rituals to, I don't know, get yourself in a comfortable zone?
Rituals, not so much. Yeah, pretty much schedules we do. So we get the venue. I won't read, watch telly, anything like that on fight day. You just sort of sit and you just wait. Anything that's a distraction is pushed away. So most of the time I see my family all in the morning, and then I won't see them again until after the fight. I don't speak to people before, apart from my coaches. You have to sort of isolate yourself, and then we go to the venue, do the medicals, make sure everyone's thing, and then obviously main event, I don't have to be back till 7 o'clock, so we'll leave, go back to the hotel room, chill in the hotel room. So I'll lie down, just have a talk and relax. This time I did a radio interview while I was waiting for Radio Sport Live, I think it was. I probably got the name wrong. And then we go back to the venue about 7 o'clock. I sleep before as well, so I normally sleep for an hour, about 4 till 5:30. Get ready, go back, get in, start wrapping up and warming up, and then make sure you're ready and warm to go. Your gloves and all are ready, and warm up right until they tell you it's time to walk, and then we make the walk and get the job done.
So how warm do you get before a fight? Do you like to burn out a little bit? Do you like to just get sweat on, just a little move around? How much do you warm up, really?
So I warm up to make sure I'm sweating, but I warm up to make sure it's in bursts. So we'll do an intense burst, stop, rest, intense burst, stop, rest. So so even though you're elevating your heart rate, I never hit a red zone sort of thing. That's the easiest way to explain it. So you open your lungs up and you're going to sort of breather, but it's short and intense burst. You're not going for ages. Like, we've seen guys in, I remember I seen a guy warming up in Cardiff once, and he warmed up for about 3 hours, hitting the pads as hard as he can, and he fought and gassed in about 30 seconds. Like, he'd blown it all out in changing rooms. Like, you have to be smart. Like, we're not marathon runners. It's a 15-minute fight, and it's a 15-minute war, or you're in a 25-minute fight, it's a 25-minute war. Like, you're not running a marathon. You're doing a sprint over and over and over again for 5 minutes, and then you're stopping for a minute, and then you're doing it again for 3 to 5 rounds. So you have to be ready for a short fight, or you have to be ready for a long fight, but every one of them is going to be intense and they're going to be fast. So you have to make sure that you warmed up and you've got stacks of energy ready to go. And I think people make the mistake in their recoveries post weigh-ins. Like, you see guys who weigh in and they've cut 30 pounds, and then they go in straight from and downstairs, they're looking like skeletons, and then they're sitting down doing Nando's, and you're like, what is wrong with you? Like, you haven't got any water in you. Your enzymes in your stomach, in your throat, in your tongue are all sort of dried up, and you're going to try and force food into you. I've seen people eat steaks as well, and it's just like, what are you doing? Steaks and chips, and it's like, fantastic. The next day, you're waking up feeling dehydrated, you probably got a dry mouth, you probably got a headache, you're probably feeling terrible, and then you've got to fight a guy who's always going to look better than you. Your opponent always does look better than you. Like, I always look like a skeleton when I weigh in. By the time I fight, I weigh in at 70. I walked into this fight at 82 kilos.
Oh, what do you start camp at then?
At the minute, I'm eating 3.5K.
Okay, I thought you were going to say like higher than that, like early, like 90s or something.
I'm working on building a bit more muscle. So Dan Hooker, who fights in the lightweight division, he walks at 85.5, so he's probably about 85, 84.5K. All you have to do is make sure I'm leading into, so that coming into sort of fight week, you're below 79 kilos.
Okay, that's a lot more digestible actually, but yeah, even still. So on your walkout, you use that song, was it Broken People by
Logic?
Yeah. Is that something you've had for a while then? Because you've had it on a few fights now.
Every one of my fights, I think, from my first or my second. I think it was my first pro fight has been Logic by Broken People. We wanted to find a song that sort of resonated with us. We wanted a Welsh song, but we couldn't really find anything too much. And then my brother mentioned this one, played it for us, and we all liked it, and we liked the lyrics and sort of what they said. So we stuck with it, and we haven't really found a replacement, and we like it, so we'll just run with it. And it's my song now. Everyone knows when that song plays. It's my song. I remember Brett Johns, so it's made me laugh. He went to Adrenaline, which is a smaller show in Cage Warriors. Brilliant show up near Swansea, and a boy walked out to it, and he was like, "Look, you can't walk out to this. This is Mason's song." And I remember, yeah, I heard that, I was laughing, and that's the thing. Like Jack Shaw's on fire. I've got Broken People by Logic. Like, you find a song that sticks to you, and it's another quirk of you, and people remember you by the song, and when they hear that song, they'll think you, and that's another thing. It's another part of marketing.
Yeah, like Paddy Pimlet's head to roll thing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this after you won your fight in the interview about you don't touch gloves because of a judo competition. Yep. So how long ago was that? Talk us through that experience, because hearing it, I could just hear like in your voice how much that hurt at the time.
So I trained judo since I was 10, I believe, 10. It was my fourth martial art. And it was the reason I wanted it was because I've been doing kickboxing, I've been cleaning up in the circuits we've been doing. And I thought I was a little big kid, and my dad was like, "Look, we want to do judo's a good mark for you, especially if you want to go to MMA. The wrestling year isn't at that level of America, so get into judo, it'll be good for you." So started doing judo, picked it up quite well because I'd done a little bit of wrestling since I was about 6. So I knew how to wrestle, so I knew how to do double legs and sort of run people to the ground and stuff. So I picked judo up quite well. I had a judo coach called Dave Speddy in my local town, and I was sort of winning stuff on the local Welsh sort of side circuits, and I ended up qualifying for the Welsh team, getting the Welsh team, and getting absolutely bulldozed, and then by the juniors and the seniors, and then sort of stuck with them. And they used to take me away from school, so I'd leave on a Thursday afternoon after school, go with them. We travel somewhere, weigh in on Friday or weigh in Saturday morning. So we travel on Friday morning to get there, so I'd obviously miss school, and then I compete. I remember I was 15 in school, and I just got up to about 58 kilos, and I was literally like a skeleton, so I was tiny. And I cut 8.5 kilos to make weight. Didn't know how to cut weight. So I basically starved myself in school, and I had no weight to lose mine. So I made a crazy weight cut. Was literally starving, eating a little bit of salads and running as much as I could. Like, none of us knew how to cut weight. Like, there was no nutritionist to help us. The Welsh team isn't funded enough for that, and the nutritionists only ever wanted to work with people who were successful. So if you made it into GB and you were close to Olympics, then they'd throw money at you left, right, and centre. But it's stupid. They don't want to help people who need the help. They only want to help the people who don't need it. So, like, they're all glory huggers, and it used to really irritate me. Because we were kids, none of us knew how to cut weight, none of us knew how to recover. Like, we'd weigh in and eat shit. We'd eat crisps, chocolate, drink Pepsis and Powerades. I used to drink Powerades. I don't really like fizzy drinks and stuff, and I never really ate crisps. But I used to eat chocolate and drink Powerades after weigh-in, and none of us really knew. We'd eat pizzas and pastas and stuff after weigh-ins. And I remember I cut all this weight, and I had to know how much. And by the time I walked into fight, it was 58 kilos. And I fought a little a little guy. I can't remember where he was from, but it was in. We travelled miles for this place, Bremen, I think it was, and I turned up and fight, and the ref says sort of Ray, which is bow, and then he says Jimmy, which is go, and at the time everyone would touch hands before you start. So, but the touching hands is for the fighters. It's nothing to do with the referee. So, like obviously boxing, they'll call you to the middle MMA, and you'll touch gloves before, and then they'll start, which obviously I do in every fight. But when that ref says to Jimmy, that means go, so anything happens. So I stepped forwards, reached forwards to shake hands with him, and he reached forwards to shake my hand. As soon as he grabbed my hand, he threw me off it, and literally I managed to spin, but he had a sort of, so he was already off it, which is a heavy score enough to win the fight, and then kept me out for the rest of the fight, and I ended up going home after cutting all that weight, because I got caught short cold because the guy caught me cold. So ever since then, I never did it. If people want to touch hands with me, they can touch hands with me if the ref allows it. If not, I won't do it. So I always wave off touch of gloves. I think it's weird because people still get really confused when I do it. And it's like, I've done it since I debuted. Like, watch my fights, for God's sake. Like, you'll see that why I do it, and there's no disrespect. And people have called it disrespectful before, and I really don't understand it because I'm more than happy to have photos. People like, it was the fight I fought Common Day. Obviously, it was the first fight I really showed my oblique kicks. I had an injury walking into it, so I struggled my striking.
Man. They were horrible.
So I focused on my oblique kicks. I couldn't really throw my right hand. So I went in there with an injury that basically ruined my striking. And it's one of the best things I did for my career because I really realised that my wrestling wasn't bad, but I was doing the wrong thing because I picked Common up about 13 times and slammed him. Was literally blowing by the second round. So I really improved my wrestling since then, and rather than picking people up all the time, it's always dragging people down and sweeping and making sure you're dragging people to the mat in the most efficient way possible. So it really helped my game. But obviously, with the oblique kicks and not touching gloves, there was people tweeting me and dropping me messages saying, "Look, you're disrespectful. There's no respect between you and other people." And my reply to that was just put a photo of me and Common up after the fight, backstage, hugging each other, taking photos, and do you know what I mean? Like, I always show respect to my opponents, and it's just what you see in a fight is a fight. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not football. We're not in there to kick a ball and avoid each other. We're in there to take each other apart. And like that doesn't mean we lose respect. Like I had massive respect for Joe. When I debuted, I seen Joe before McColgan fight. I seen him fight twice, and I thought, yeah, that guy's a contender, and his name was on my list. And then obviously he sort of had a rough time where he ended up having a loss and a draw. So he was he lost the Jai, and obviously then he drew against Ben. So I thought he was he was out of the running. I was going to miss him. I thought by the time I bounced to UFC, he may be back on the rise, but I'm not really going to get a chance. And I thought I was going to miss him. And then when it worked out well, and I ended up fighting him. And obviously, you know what happens.
So with all your martial arts, so where did you start then? So it was kickboxing before judo then?
Kickboxing was first. So when I was younger, I did a little bit of football and rugby and stuff, and my dad said I was too violent. So rugby I liked because I could tackle, but I was terrible with passing the ball and running. I just wanted to tackle people. Football we did when I was younger. From the time I was about 5. My brothers all did football, so I did football. My dad said, first of all, I had 2 left feet. And they said the last straw they had, because I was sort of like the gump of the team, so they put me on to just smash players. From I was 6 years of age, and I remember I played my cousin and double legged her, so I was two-footed, not double legged, two-footed, like studs out, and then it was a she. So I took on a 6-year-old girl with 2 studs flying through the air. So after that, my dad said he sort of dragged me off the pitch and was embarrassed and said, "Look, you're never going to football again. You're terrible."
That's the thumbnail sorted. Mason Jones, the lightweight champions, 2-foot studs, a 6-year-old.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I was 6 at the time, so it's not too bad. It was same age band, but it was my cousin as well, so she wasn't too happy. But after that, there was a local grappling gym in Blaven, so my dad took me up to him and asked if I could train, and they said, "Look, he's too young." I was like 7 at the time. They said, bring him back when he's like 16, and he can start mixing him with the adult sessions. And I wasn't interested in that, so I didn't want to wait. So my dad took me to a small kickboxing gym when I was 7, and I started from then. And then I sort of did a little bit with Carl Parker, who run the grappling gym. Obviously, he's wrestling coach now at Shaw Martial Arts. He was the guy who took me to who I got taken to the grappling hall and asked to train with. And then I did little bits through the years with them, and that was the gym where I did side judo in the end. But like, I train kickboxing. I was doing 5 days a week by the time I was about 8. And then when the judo got introduced at 10 or 11, I was down there once a week when they did the sessions. And then by the time I was 12, I was down in the Welsh squad on top of that once a week. So I obviously backed off from the kickboxing a little bit. And then by the time I was 15, I was in the Welsh team. So I trained. I was training down there all week. Obviously, you miss school. I was down there in the nights most of the time. And then once I left school, I was down there Monday. I get dropped off, and then I'd leave on Thursday night to go home and do kickboxing and my MMA sessions on Friday. And my judo coach at the time, the national coach, was tampering me because I could have had funding through the Welsh team, and the only way I could get funding through the Welsh team, I had to be there Monday through to Friday. So you go on Friday night. But I didn't want to miss my kickboxing sessions on Thursday night and Friday full day. So and I had a Friday class I could go do. So I used to leave on Thursday night after the practice, go home, and then I train Friday back home. And obviously I couldn't get funding for the Welsh team after I left school. So he wasn't happy with me, and he wasn't at me for a long time. And now he's happy with me because he's still my corner man now. And said it was what I want to do. I was always open with him. I always said, look, I don't want to. My goal isn't sort of to go to the Olympics in judo. I wouldn't mind. Obviously, I'd love to get a world medal or a world place because it'd help my MMA. But I always want to do MMA, and he was open to that. And he's seen how hard I worked and stuff. So he was always. I think he sort of dropped me from the competitive team he focused on for about 3 months until he realised how hard I trained, and then he sort of took me back into the team, but I was never given funding. So I had help from a local company, but it was always sort of, like I said, I've always been involved with different things. I remember I started boxing when I was 17. I started BJJ when I was 14, yeah, because I had a blue belt in BJJ just before my 16th birthday. And then, I've been in these sports for years. Taekwondo I started late. I started after Thai boxing with my Taekwondo coach about 18, I think, 19. So I've always been involved as much as possible and try to make sure I'm all rounder when I get my sessions in. But it's hard to do all these different sports and stuff. So
say you started back at school then, so you must have been exhausted all the time having to go to school, training full time, then competing full time as well. And on top of that as well, the other kids must have been terrified of you, surely.
I was still weedy, man. So I had a lot of friends in there and they knew I was quite tough, but I was still only do you mean? And by the time I left school, I was 58 kilos. So what's that? It's like 8 stone, and I was quite short. So you got the big rugby boys who always thought they were quite tough, and it wasn't until I really started sprouting which was about 18. So now I'm 5'10", just shy of 6 foot. Like I said, I'm 13 odd stone, and I'm built well, and obviously you've seen my striking and stuff. So now I'm sort of starting. I'm still filling out. I'm still getting bigger. Obviously, I'm not getting taller at the minute. I'm just getting wider and sort of thicker and more leaner. But my growth pattern's been weird in anyway. With the celiac, I'm a celiac. So I got celiac disease. So when I was younger, they didn't really know what it is. So I was malnourished, and I had sort of early onset brittle bones disease. So my growth pattern's been weird anyway from that. So obviously it didn't really help in school. So people knew I was tough in school, especially obviously we'd always mess around. I've known my friends since I was in primary school, so they always knew I was quite tough. But I didn't really get in too many fights in school. Outside of school, when we was about 17 and we all started going to the pubs and clubs and stuff, then we got into a few fights. But I usually kept my hands clean. It was usually fights wouldn't last long.
keeping the record there as well, oblique kicks as well, and all the knockouts as well. Now, being that kind of build and everything going on, do you reckon that was a real reason you got into martial art, where it really sort of resonates as well?
No, so the reason I got into martial arts is because from a kid, my mum said even since I was toddler, I just had sort of temper problems. So I just, my older brother's very intelligent. He's always been the type of person, like you could sit him in a maths exam, you wouldn't even need to look at the book, you just get every answer right. Whereas I always been sort of more aggressive. So I remember we used to have our, like my mum said, when I was a toddler, as soon as I had teeth, I used to bite chunks out of him when I was a kid. My mum said you didn't do anything, I just bite him. And I've just always been sort of struggled with aggression and stuff. And now you wouldn't really understand because I'm the most chilled out person you'll meet. But this is because I train all the time. So it's always been sort of helped me balance my temper problems and give me a focus on stuff. And it's taught me respect, honor, courage, like the right way to live your life. And like we're not a religious family, so I needed their outlook. I needed to know how to sort of behave and how to sort of handle everything. So martial arts taught me a lot and really helped focus myself. And I don't know how I would have ended up, but it probably would have been good if I didn't have that, because I probably would have been fighting all the time and fighting in the wrong ways.
So with you're saying there about channeling it and managing it all, so do you do anything outside of martial arts directly that helps with that kind of mental side of stuff? Like, do you do any sort of specific reading or listen to anything particular or speak to anyone about these kind of things to try and...
I read a lot. I don't suffer from that anymore, just because I train all the time. Like I train 3 times a week, even 3 times a week, 3 times a day. So even now, like I said, I've trained full time since I was 15. Like I never stop. I never really have time off. Even now, I'd be back in fight camp, obviously without. But when you're not in fight camp, you're in off season, which is you train in the same amount. You just opening up, and you're not trying to trying to get fit and trying to get a strong, get weight down. You're just trying to improve. So I've always got goals. I'm always training. So I don't really have too much of a life outside of MMA. Like MMA is a key part of me. Like obviously I skydive, I ride motorbikes, I surf if I can. Snowboard, all the...
You say obviously, like it's Mason Jones, lightweight champion, snowboarder.
But we don't have, like, obviously, I try and avoid that now. So snowboarding is hard for me because obviously there's the chance of injury. Skydiving was the same. I had to stop skydiving in between camps because most of the time, obviously I went through that phase where I was literally fighting in fight camp constantly. Like I fought 5 times in 12 months. So I didn't really have any time out of that. I was just constantly in camp. Constantly recovering and then back into camp. So I had to sort of do less of that. And it's just hard for these other things. They pylines. I do read a lot. I read a lot of fiction, like ridiculous amounts. So my last camp in Team Alpha Male, I read in 4 weeks. They were short. So I read fictional books, and one of the books I read is Chinese. I can't remember the category is Chinese something, cultivation novels, and I read 48 short stories. When I mean short stories, it's like 300 odd pages. I read 48 of them while I was out there, but I read all the time. So I read novels and different things and books and series, and I read regularly. That I'll get through about 2-3 books a week easy.
So is that fiction your main sort of reading material as a preference? Is it something... How did you get into that in the first place then? It's very specific.
It was in primary school. Again, sort of I was finding my way, and I didn't click on one of my teachers very well. She was very favoured towards females. I was in a class with... there was more girls than boys, and it was a woman, I know her well, and she've only ever had girls, so she never really liked the boys. And back then, like all the boys I was in class with, they all said the same thing. Like I went in there, I was really young. This is primary school as well, so I was year 3, I think, year 3, year 4, year 3, I think, and I went in and I come back out with a low grade, and I got in, and she told the teacher in my next class, Miss Lewis, that I was a bad egg, and that I needed to be watched because I was trouble and all this. And I remember my first week of class, my teacher drew me aside, and she was like, look, she was like, I'm sorry about the way the week's been. I was like, and I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, I've been a little bit rough here. We heard you were trouble and stuff, but like you're you're quite normal actually. And she introduced me to reading, and I started reading since then. So I loved reading all the way through secondary school, all the way through, just because of my teacher, Miss Lewis, and she was really good for me. Like, she got me back on track. So when I left school, I left school with stupid amounts of exams. I was quite intelligent in school, so I had come out with 5 A's, 6 B's, 3 C's, and 1 D in religious studies. Just because
So you say like your brother's the intelligent one, then you come out with all that. So you love reading,
brother,
you got all these grades and stuff, and there you come out, you know.
My older brother's qualified to join Mensa. Do you know what Mensa is?
Yeah.
So he did the test. His girlfriend bought him it for, I don't know why she bought him it there. I don't know. That's a bit weird for me, but she bought him and he did it. And he qualified easily. Like, he's very, very intelligent. He runs. He helps run my dad's business. He's one of the top in that. He runs his own scaffolding company as well. He's literally just renovated a van. Sorry, did I go off then?
Yeah, we froze for a second, but we're all good. Audio's still coming through.
He literally renovated his own van and taught himself how to fit the plumbing, the electricians, literally how to fit windows and everything, and taught himself how to do it all. And like, that's the type of guy he is. I remember when he was 17, he decided to fix up a car. Didn't have any idea how to do it. My dad was a mechanic, but my dad was flat out running the company anyway. So he didn't really help, and my brother sort of fixed the car himself. He wasn't a mechanic, just sort of worked out how to do it. So that was my older brother. Obviously, I was the aggressive one, and then I got my younger brother, who was black sheep. He's always in trouble and he's mad. And then I've got a younger brother and a sister, and like, it's a wild family.
So what's that like when it comes to you being now professional fighter, world champion? When you come home and see him and stuff, do they rip the piss out of you? Do you still, you know, Mason, are you just like now the champion, or what's the atmosphere like around the dinner table?
They ripped me the other
That's
day.
what you want. You need to be grounded.
Else. That's what they always. That's the running joke now. I can fight, but I can't do anything else. So I helped my dad. My dad was putting a shed in the garage and a shed in the garden, and putting a new footpath in, and so we had to dig foundations and stuff for it, put a sub base in. So my dad was going to do it himself, so I gave him a hand to and here and did most of the work myself. And they were like, "We didn't know you could do that." And I'm like, "Here we go." So it's just always I'm useless. I can't 2 left feet, so it doesn't help because I'm so used to football and sports. And I was one of the people, like, if you, so let me give an example. So when I go with my girlfriend now, one of the first barbecue I got invited to with hers, it was me, her sister's boyfriend, and then her mum and dad, and we sat in the garden, and one of the dogs had this like pig toy, so it was like a squeaky plastic pig.
Yeah.
So I picked it up, went to throw it at one of the dogs, and I smashed her dad in the side of the head with a plastic pig.
Wow, that's a way to make an impression, I think, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
You and your girlfriend then, it seems like a match made in heaven almost, like 2 like high level like professional athletes and stuff. How did you guys meet in the first place?
So my S&C coach, I've been involved with since I was pro boxing, since I was 17. He does all my strength conditioning. He did her strength conditioning when she was going for the Commonwealth Games. So that was when she was in the Welsh team before she got into Team GB. So I met, cross paths with her then. Obviously, she's quite a bit younger than me, so she's 21 in June. I just did 25. So at the time I was 17, she was way too young. So I didn't really sort of see anything like that. And then by the time I really started, we used to cross paths and we missed each other so many different times. So when I was in the judo, when I was going for the same Commonwealth Games, she was 16 during the Commonwealth Games, I think. I was going for it 17 before I left. And she sort of we missed each other there. We missed each other multiple times. She was in the same kickboxing team as me as well. By the time I started going to judo, I started missing sessions. She started training with them a lot more, so I missed her then. And then after one of my fights, I seen her in the crowd. She was there to support a friend of mine, Jason Jenkins, and she sort of gave me a smile in the crowd, and we had a quick chat. And she was like, "Oh, obviously you train. Do you remember me? I trained with Reese. I know Reese." And I was like, "Oh yeah." I had no clue who she was. And then I remembered later on and dropped her a message, and then we just sort of ended up meeting up not long after that. So that was before I went to Team Alpha Male first time. So that was 2 years ago. So I've been there 5 times in 2 years.
How are you finding that balance then, training the amount you do, and also with her training as well, and spending time for each other? How's that all working out?
So it's good, to be honest. So we don't really spend time apart from training. So we're always together in the same house, and then I'll leave to go training, come back, and then I'll go train again, come back, and then she's doing uni at the minute as well. She sort of stepped in. So Maddie was a nurse while she was in Team GB, studying nursing while she was training obviously trying to qualify for the Worlds with Team GB, and then she left Team GB. She had a falling out with them, so she left nursing as well. I come back, and now she's studying to be a lawyer. She's just smashed her first year with a first. She takes the piss. She's as intelligent as my brother, so she's definitely the clever one. Like, she's literally doesn't have to try, and she gets ace and 100%. She's so smart. So while she's in uni, I'm normally training, and then a lot of time I do my sessions in a day, so I don't really do that many night sessions. I do most of my sessions, so I like training early. So I'll train 7:30 till about 10. Then I'll train 11:30 till 12:30, and then I'll train. After that, I'll either train say 3 till 4, or I'll train in the night if I have to then. But most of the time, I like to get my training done in the day. So the night sessions in fight camps are normally just sparring sessions and sort of things. Apart from that, we're usually together. She trains in the same Thai boxing gym as me now. So we spend stupid amounts of time together.
I was going to say, because when it comes to the whole fighting is very selfish, it's all, you've got to commit everything to it.
100%.
When you're with someone who's in the same kind of boat as that, I mean, it just sounds like perfect. Like, sort of, anyone who's like trying to get a relationship whilst training and fighting, like, that's exactly what you want. I said, do you fancy going training as well? Do you fancy, working out here as well? It just seems absolutely smashing as well.
So me and Mad's been together 2 years. It was 2 years in March, so I don't know what we're up to now, but 2 years and something months. But before that, I'd only had one relationship that lasted a year. And do you mean, like, I'm 25, so I avoided relationships like the plague, mainly because people didn't really understand. Like, normal people don't understand why you're cutting weight. They don't understand. Sorry, people keep calling my phone. People don't understand why you're cutting weight.
Being popular.
They don't understand why you're in the gym so much. They don't understand why you want to get punched in the face all the time. They just don't understand why you're doing. Like, I remember one of the girls I was sort of speaking to at one time, I'm messing around with. She sort of said to me at the time, she was like, so how much do you get paid? And I was like, oh, not much. And I went through it, and it was literally nothing at the time. And she was like, why? She was like, you get a normal job and earn so much money. She was like, I work in a call center and I earn this amount of money. And I was like, yeah, but it's not what I want to do. And she was like, ah. And I was like, that's what people are like. Like, I don't want to earning good money now. Obviously, I do earn good money now. I'm earning enough now where I earn a lot more than I earn the same, if not more than one or two of my friends, and they've all got good jobs. Some of my friends obviously still earn a lot more than me. They're earning big money. But eventually, obviously, you get in UFC and you start earning good track money, especially if you get a sponsorship that covers you for the year. So I try and make sure I secure at least 2 to 3 sponsorships. They're always current that sort of keep me up floated. So I'm always earning like £300 earlier, £300 a week. So that you always got money coming in. Then when you do get obviously big chunks of fight purse money, that's extra money, so you can survive on the money without. So obviously by the time I get UFC, I'm hoping I get my money up to about £550, £600 a week, so that you've got money there and you're earning this decent solid wage. So then when you do get a UFC purse, you get money paid in, that's just extra money that obviously is just to do with as you wish, straight to savings after tax.
So with say in Cage War as regards to where you're at now, like, what's your preference of your next move? Would you like to stay where you're at? Would you like to go to the UFC directly now? What's your preference?
So see, I'd love to go to UFC. Like, UFC is the goal. I'd love to be in UFC, but if I don't get in UFC, I'm not too worried. Like, I know it's gonna come eventually. It's an eventuality that I'm gonna be there. Like, I'm gonna be the UFC champion one day. So me getting there is just a stepping stone. When I get signed is a question. But as long as I get a fight, that's the main thing. Like, I think any normal period of time, virus not sort of being what it is the moment, that I would have been signed after my last win. The way it is the moment, I can't see myself being signed till next year sometime. So if I can get a couple of fights in before the end of this year to really cement my place, then that means I'd love to fight a UFC veteran. So if I can fight someone who's been in UFC and made the level, and then I can dismantle them and destroy them and prove that I'm better than them, then obviously that's another reason for UFC to come calling.
I mean, literally the last lightweight champion to finish what was it, UFC veteran?
Jai?
It was a lightweight. I heard, but yeah, he knocked out Kane Carrizosa. I can't remember say his name. And then he went to the UFC. Was it directly after that, or was it after the Jack Grant fight? Whichever one it was.
He beat Jack Grant, then he fought against Kane Carrizosa, and then he's gone, and he was meant to fight on UFC London, obviously, which was cancelled.
Now, regards of current, like, guys who've been around, like guys from the Bama days kind of things as well, like I said, like Mark Diakase and those kind of people. Yeah. Is there anyone out there who takes your sort of interest? For say you get signed tomorrow to the UFC, they say, here's the roster, except for like Khabib and who would be your ideal first, like your introduction fight?
Justin Gaethje.
Oh, no.
No, these guys like obviously Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Like, these are all the guys you're always looking at. Like, everyone looks at the top of the tree. When the UFC move comes and we get the decision, I'd love to sort of plan out who I'd love to fight and sort of start breaking down even more those fighters more and more. But you don't really know until you make a debut what they need you for. They could ask you to make a short notice step in, or they could ask you just to sign, and then which would be ideal, and then build you up from there. So I never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to come, but I'm just prepared and ready to make a move whenever. So that when they do make a move, I'd love to fight my way through. And these are the guys I've always dream of fighting, and they're the guys I'd love to put a performance on and get a fight of the night performance and take a lovely bonus home.
In between fights, do you like doing like jiu-jitsu competitions, like other smaller, lower pressure events? Do you ever compete in those kind of things?
No. So I've been invited on Polaris multiple times. I'm not interested in that. You go on, you get injured, and you can't fight. Obviously, they're not as well paying, and they don't mean as much. UFC is what I want to do, so I'm going to wait and bide my time for them. Obviously, if I'm in UFC, it could be different because obviously their layoffs are different. You could fight once and not fight again for 12 months. So then obviously I may do a couple of more things, a couple of jiu-jitsu comps secondary of them, but at the minute, no.
And one thing that keeps getting pointed out every time you come in is always your black belts and everything else. Which one was the most significant to you when you've got that black belt?
So my latest one, which was my jiu-jitsu black belt, that was the one that meant the most to me, I think, because obviously my kickboxing black belt I had when I was young. I had that when I was younger. My judo black belt I didn't actually want. The reason I got my black belt in judo was because my coach, when I was heading towards when I was in the shortlisting for Commonwealth Games, I qualified. I had enough points to qualify. But there was 3 of us in my weight division who qualified. I think in the team, in the boys team, I think only 5 of us qualified. And 3 of us were for the same weight. And then a couple of boys who didn't manage to make qualifications, enough qualifying points, they still managed to go. But I qualified enough points, but I ended up fighting off with one of the boys. And I took an injury to my shoulder. So in the end, I stepped down with an injury. So the only reason I ended up getting my judo black belt was because my coach said to make sure that I was the most sort of qualified to go, that they didn't end up saying, look, you haven't got a black belt, he's got a black belt, so we're going to take him. I got my judo black belt. So my BSJ black belt was something I really wanted before I was 25. It was a goal I wanted for years. On top of getting the Cage Warriors lightweight title before 25. And the 2 things that ended up working out in my favor spectacularly.
Do you spend much more time in the gi since, training MMA full time and fighting professionally?
So I hate the gi now. It's a ongoing joke with my team. They always think it's funny because I hate training in the gi. But after all the years I did it, I was happy to get into no gi and obviously go back to my roots and training in no gi situations and back to it. So I still train regularly in a gi, minimum once a week, but I really don't like it. I prefer being freedom. I'm light and I'm fast, so being in no gi is better for me because I can slip around people and I can really use my agility, whereas in a gi it's easier for the heavyweights to hold on to me. And my jiu-jitsu team is mainly heavier weights. Like most of the guys are like 90 kilos plus, so training my guys like that is hard.
So back to where we were somewhat started about your origin into martial
Sorry, 2
arts.
seconds. Let me just reply because one of my coaches keeps ringing.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all, mate.
Sorry, I do apologise.
That's all right, mate. We can cut this little segment out.
There we go. Sorry, boss.
Cool. No worries. It's all good. Yeah. So with your original journey in martial arts, so initially went from something you just to do with dealing with your anger and that kind of thing. Where did the competitive side come from there? Have you always been quite competitive?
Yeah, like I said, my dad used to take me to football games. My brother always used to do football matches and sort of things. And you've always liked this and this. And my dad always knew I was going to be a fighter, I think. So when we got into it, they started taking us to kickboxing comps, and I always liked fighting. So I was ecstatic to start. I think I did my first one when I was about 9, and then I started doing kickboxing comps. Then traditional jiu-jitsu fights and grappling comps, freestyle grappling comps, because that's where my first kickboxing team was Falcons, which is obviously where Joe Duffy and those lot come from. Richard Shaw, which is obviously Jack Shaw's dad. That's one of the gyms he first started at, as well as Marshman and Jack Shaw. So all these guys it was sort of the only version of MMA they did then. So when I started doing judo and stuff, I'd already been competing in a lot of different things. And then obviously BJJ as well. After the judo, I'd already done loads of judo by the time I started doing BJJ. And then boxing, in between leaving the judo, I wanted to get back into competing. So I went boxing, and they wouldn't let me amateur box. So I had a bit of a layout before. I wanted to make sure I sharpened my boxing before I went back into MMA. So I couldn't amateur box, and they wanted me to take a time out, and I didn't really want to waste time. So I ended up going pro boxing and doing some pro boxing fights before switching back to MMA.
So now it's time for the most important, most personal question I can ask you. You ready for this?
Here we go.
The post-fight meal/treat. Talk to me. Don't spare any detail. You're the Cage Warriors World Lightweight Champion. What are you having?
Oh, so let me give you 2 answers on this. So
here we go. This is
let me give you 2 answers on this, because obviously there's always the meal you have post-fight, which is like we'll finish. So I finished this fight. I don't know what time it was. I think it's about to say 11 o'clock by the time I got back. Like, it's hard to get proper food in there, do you know what I mean? Like, to get a decent quality meal, not just a takeaway meal, is hard. As well as your adrenaline's up, your stomach's still quite dodgy anyway, especially with my celiacs. It's hard to get a good quality meal in. So we end up having like a buffet sort of style stuff. So we had some pizza, a couple of different, like, my mum had made a bit of a curry, and we had little like wings and stuff like this on the apartment we had. They surprised me with a boat department. So we was literally we had a boat in the water, like a boat mansion thing. It was wild to have like a recovery party there, and they had cake and stuff. So there was that. But the main meal I wanted to have, which I didn't get to have because of all the isolation and lockdown and stuff, I always go to after my fights, is a place in Hereford called Beefy Boys, and they do the best burgers I have ever had. And like, you were talking monster-sized burgers. So if you get a chance, check their Instagram out. Like, they don't sponsor me. I have a good relationship with the guys there, but their food is insane. Like, they do wings, they do burgers, they do like loaded fries. It is insane.
Okay, so Mason Jones loves Beefy Boys.
Beefy
That's
Boys,
fine.
oh.
That's the headline sorted. Now, more details what we're asking. So there you get there. What's your burger? Don't spare any details on
I
this.
can't remember the name. It's...
Well, what's your perfect burger? Don't necessarily have to be in the menu, but what is your ideal burger?
But this is the thing. This is the one I usually go for this when I prepare this. So I always have a side of barbecue chicken wings. I love the chicken wings, the barbecue chicken wings. And then I have a gluten-free burger, because that's the other thing for me. Because obviously I'm a celiac. I can't eat normal bread. Yeah. So it's gluten-free, and it's the something boy. I can't remember what it's called. The Rude Boy it is. That's it. It's called the Rude Boy. And it's like the patties are like, oh, they are spectacular. It's like 100% quality beef. It's like a spicy cheese. It's like a mix of different sauces inside. Oh, it's just spectacular. Bacon, the lot. the dirty boy, I think it is. That's my. It's either the rude boy or the dirty boy. That's the one. And a side of loaded fries to go with my wings. Oh,
I'm getting hungry.
millionaire's fries. It is. That's the loaded fries I have. So it's millionaire. So it's like bacon, loads of cheese. Oh, spectacular. Truffle oil.
Oh, Mason Jones moved to welterweight. There we go.
Oh, I'm bigger than a middleweight at the moment, so I need to get back that in, I think.
This is it. Now, before I let you go, is anyone you shout out on sponsors and that whilst I've got you?
Yeah, so big shout out to SD Sealants. Obviously, they're a big sponsor for me. P&P Builders is another massive one. They've sponsored me since I was a kid. CCS Scaffolding, another massive sponsor for me. Tatami Fightwear, they sponsored me back in the days when I was doing judo. They were one of my first big sponsors I had after P&P Builders. And then Condor Talent's another one. They always sponsor Fight by Fight, and they're always regular with their sponsorships. So big thanks to all my regular sponsors. And if follow me on Instagram, guys, at Mason Jones 95. Give me a shout out. I'll drop me a message. I do reply as much as possible. So today I've missed a lot of messages because I've had people messaging me happy birthday non-stop since this morning. So I'm staying off Facebook, but drop me a message on Instagram. I'll try and get back to you. And thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on.
Thank you for coming.
And, obviously, we'll have to get another interview in the future. I really enjoyed today.
Perfect. Thank you, mate. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Speak soon.
And enjoy your birthday.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.